Hi, I'm Jacqueline.
And I'm Courtney, and this is Caffeinated Crimes.
Take 2, because I just bumped the hell out of my mic saying hello, so we just had to restart that again. And we do that less often now than we used to. We used to have to restart a lot of times, mostly because I would get the giggles, but
I meant to tell you, something else we used to always do before we hit record is like the red leather, yellow leather, and say different stuff you used to say in chorus. Well, I was listening to the It's Always Sunny podcast, and they did that on the podcast, and I was laughing so hard, and I was
so
they
funny.
do it too.
Yeah, we did that every time for, 6 months, and then we just stopped, and now we're just like, are you ready? Okay, go.
Yeah, now we're just like, hold on, let me get this cough out. Hello, this is Caffeinated Crimes. Is that what I sound like?
Yes. Hopefully we both sound better this week. We both still have coughs, still recovering from this first illness since the last 2 years, because...
Yeah, I forgot how much being sick sucked.
Yeah, it really does. It's just, especially the nighttime cough that it's you just can't, it just doesn't stop.
That's kind of how mine got for me, is it was at night and the mornings were the worst.
Yeah.
So, I hated going to bed, and then I hated waking up, because I was like, here we go, I'm just going to cough up a lung.
Exactly. It's the worst. And this is the first time that I've, not been able to, take, decongestants and cough syrup and all that stuff, because I'm breastfeeding an infant, and it could dry up my milk, and so I just have to suffer through with nothing, and it's pretty, it sucks. It does. But I think we're both on the mend here, hopefully. Knock on
we're on
everything.
the up and up.
Yeah, just in time for the holidays to get sick again, being around people. It's going to be great.
Yeah, when you're listening to this will be the week of Christmas.
Yes.
So Christmas is almost there. Did you get your shopping done?
Probably not.
Because I'm still working on it. Still waiting on some shipments that looking a bit questionable, but we'll see.
Every year at Christmas time, I tell myself, next year, I'm going to get started early. And then every year, it's December 15th, and I'm like, shit.
See, I was a little bit more proactive. There's 2 things I ordered, on Black Friday, which is a month before Christmas. Reasonable time.
Pretty good, yeah.
One's from Target. I'm convinced UPS is walking it here. They're walking it. It has to be. It took 3 days to get from, Indiana to, around Nashville, Tennessee, and then 3 days to get from, Nashville to Knoxville.
Oh,
and
they're
it's
for
still
sure
not
walking
here.
that. Yeah.
So I think someone's just on horse and buggy walking it here. And then I had another Etsy one, which is a custom made thing. So I understand that takes some more time, but I'm like, hey girl, if it's going to be past this, I need to change that shipping address. Can we change that? Because getting a little panicked here.
Yeah. The holidays just sneak up on you so quickly, and I don't know.
And especially with the mail around this time. I'm sure it is so backed up. So I'm going to try and start even earlier next year. We'll see how it goes.
I remember last year, which, first of all, Courtney, our packages that Courtney sent to me last year, we had a lot of issues with. I mean, the first one I think was 6 weeks because it got lost, and by the time I found it, this thing looked like it had been to war. It was beaten to hell. The mug inside was broken, but we were able to glue it back together, and I still use it all the time, so it was great. Christmas present, I went to the wrong post office. I mean, it was just a hot mess. And then I was also getting Christmas cards the end of January last year that were sent out the beginning of December from 500 miles away that just took forever to arrive. So yeah, who knows? I mean,
yeah, I don't know what's going on at your post office. That's why this year I'm hand delivering it, guys.
Yes.
I am making a stop to hand deliver it.
Which was my plan all along.
Also, just a side note, if you can hear in the background a train whistle, I'm really sorry. I don't know what the hell this train is doing. It does not stop. Still going, guys. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, you're just gonna have to, just along for the ride, for the train ride. Okay, I think it was time to get started.
Is it getting you in the mood for the Christmas spirit? isn't that a thing?
Go.
Train rides,
the Polar
Christmas
Express.
Spirit.
Yeah.
Literally didn't hear it until we hit record, and now it won't stop. So if you hear that, I am so sorry.
It was all intended, our little background aesthetic, to get you in the mood for this horrible Christmas story, because that makes sense.
Oh my God, it's depressing.
Yeah, I don't know. We gotta stop doing this. I mean, we are a true crime podcast. I don't know how fun we're gonna ever get. But anyway, to get into our updates this week, I'm sure everyone has seen and heard that Josh Duggar was found guilty of receipt of child pornography and possession of child pornography, which our Google search before recording was a little unclear, but it sounds like the receipt is the actual like act of receiving it, and then possession is obviously the having possession of it. So we don't really know quite why there are two different charges, but there are, and he was charged with both of them. So cool, great. He does face 20 years in prison and fines of up to $250,000 for each count, and he will be sentenced in 4 months. So we don't have the information on the sentencing yet, but he was found guilty of a whole bunch of child pornography. So Merry Christmas.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think I've heard too, like, I don't know if this is fact or I'm sorry guys, I was never a big Duggar person. 19 kids and counting, like you should have stopped at 2, but
yeah, no thanks.
And a little too much for me. You know, her bladder is falling out of her uterus. That's all I gotta say. Anyway,
like she's gotta be wearing diapers all the time. Like yeah,
I would think so, but I don't know if this is rumor or fact. But isn't it like he also like molested his sisters?
I've seen that as
I don't know if that was like assumed because of this or if it's like fact. I don't really know, but yeah, he's gonna go to prison for a long time, and we know what happens to people in prison on child charges especially, so
yeah. Good luck to you, sir.
Yeah, good luck. And we also do want to bring up, at the time of this recording, which is about a week before you're hearing it, we did have some really bad tornadoes hit the middle of the U.S., especially in Kentucky, Illinois, Arkansas, Missouri, Tennessee, and Mississippi. So right there in that little section, I think Kentucky definitely got hit the worst. Looks like their death tolls, they don't even know, but it's probably a lot. And there were a few deaths in a few other states. So we're just hoping all our listeners out there are safe, and that, you know, you didn't lose anyone that you know or you love. It sucks. It's right around Christmas. And then if you lose your whole home, and I mean, a tornado right before Christmas, like,
yeah,
what is happening? Like, that's not a thing. So just really we're thinking of these people, and if there's anything we can do to like help, if we need to share any like fundraisers people are doing, we'll totally. Instagram lets us do links now, so we'll happily share any links to help you guys out now. So just wanted to bring that up and say you guys are all in our thoughts.
Yeah, definitely. And now to get into this very sad holiday episode. Our sources for this week were an episode of Homicide for the Holidays, a Christmas Massacre. So that was season 1, episode 3.
Which, can I just say, I hate the name of that TV series.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No. An LA Times article, an Oxygen.com article, Daily News article, and episode 107 of the Morbid podcast called the Covina Christmas Eve Massacre. On Christmas Eve in 2008, Bruce Jeffrey Pardo went into a house in Covina, California, where a family was having a Christmas Eve party. He was dressed as Santa, and he murdered 9 people and injured 3. So Covina, California is a quiet community about 22 miles east of Los Angeles. So you can kind of get that like small town feel, like where you might want to raise a family, but you're still kind of also like part of Los Angeles. So kind of that like sweet spot. And the town of Covina just loves Christmas. So they have a Christmas parade, a Christmas tree lighting ceremony. They put lights on the palm trees. So even though it's like warm, like they're still trying to give it that like Christmas feel. So Joseph and Alice Ortega loved Christmas and loved spending time with their families. Joseph, who was better known as Papa Joe, was the proud son of Mexican immigrants. The documentary does say that he was the first in his family to be born in the United States, but another source says that both Joseph and Alice had been born in Mexico and then come to the U.S. together. So either way, like first or second generation immigrants. He did have a very successful industrial paint business and was able to retire. And in 2008, he had been married to his wife Alice for 53 years. She was described as just like the perfect grandmother, you know, just caring for everyone, making sure everyone's fed. You know how those grandmas do. So they had 5 children, and the oldest, James and Charles, worked in the family business for years. And then James went on to run his own successful paint shop. And Charles and Papa Joe had recently bought a racehorse for fun. So Charles had married a woman named Sherry, and James was married to a woman named Teresa. So Papa Joe and Alice then had their 3 youngest, Letitia, Alicia, and Sylvia. And Papa Joe and Alice loved hosting a Christmas Eve gathering every year. So, you know, all of their children are grown and they're going to have all their grandchildren together. So they really just love this time of year where like everyone can actually be together at one time, which we know is super hard with the holidays. You know, because it's hard to like get everyone in the same place. So this like Christmas Eve time was really special for them. So on December 24th, 2008, the party was in full swing and the celebration was bigger and better than ever. Papa Joe, Alice, and their children were in a game of Texas Hold'em while the grandchildren played video games and hung out around the outdoor pool. Then the doorbell rang around 11:30 p.m. as the party was starting to wind down. Letitia's daughter, Katrina, was 8 years old, and she ran to the door. She yells happily, "Santa, Santa," as a man dressed in Santa comes in. Then chaos ensues as the man dressed as Santa pulls out guns. Around this time, 911 dispatch started receiving a lot of calls, and they got reports that a house was burning in the neighborhood. So the dispatch sends firefighters and first responders, and then like more specific calls start coming in, and like it didn't really seem like a normal house fire. One detective described it as apocalyptic, like it's just like insane. One neighbor reported that every window was completely engulfed in flames. There was fire everywhere. She was worried that it was even going to spread to her house. Like, it's this huge fire that they're like, okay, this was like super quick, super big. It actually took 80 firefighters to extinguish the fire. So they did believe that an accelerant was used or like some type of explosion because it was so big and the firefighters had gotten there so quickly, but it still took so many, you know, so long to get it put out.
Yeah, it's definitely different than like, oh, like the curtain caught on fire from a candle and all this. This is like, oh, in like 5 minutes, the entire house is burning.
Yeah. So the first responders were searching for any of the party guests to see if anyone had been able to escape. So they believed that about 25 people were in the house from the information they had received from other people. And they did positively contact 16 people who were in the house. So they knew about 9 were still unaccounted for. So the only Ortega sibling that could be found was Leticia. So Leticia, her husband, and Katrina had climbed the fence in the backyard to a neighbor's house to call 911. However, Leticia had then left for the hospital because her daughter had been shot. So the house guests started to tell police like what had happened, how a man dressed as Santa came in and started shooting. They got a lot of conflicting reports, but a very good lead came from a neighbor, Teresa Ganez, who saw a car leaving the dead-end road at around 11:45 p.m. She said she saw a small blue car and it was going at a very high rate of speed and the lights were out. So obviously that's something kind of, you know, unusual that'll stand out. Teresa said she just found it really strange and police immediately put an APB out on the car, which was a blue Dodge Caliber. So the next day, December 25th, the fire at the Ortega house was finally out and they let it cool down before they could investigate. And Covina Police Department had never seen anything like this. So like we said earlier, 9 people were still unaccounted for. Papa Joe, Alice, Charles, Sherry, James, Teresa, Sylvia, Alicia, and Alicia's son, Michael. So with the potential of 9 victims in the home, Covina called LAPD to assist them, and they brought in the SORT team, which is a Special Operations Response Team. So this team is comprised of criminalists, investigators, photographers, and a large assortment of other professionals. So when they started investigating, they did find a few bodies, but they weren't able to be identified. Because the remains were so burnt, they did have to use dental records to identify all the victims. And the 9 who were unaccounted for did end up being the 9 victims. So all 9 of them had been targeted.
Yeah. In Sylmar, California, which is also a suburb of Los Angeles and about 40 miles from Covina, another death had occurred on Christmas Eve as well. So 44-year-old Brad Pardo returns home to find his door unlocked. He had gone to a Christmas party and he was out late. And when he walked into his living room, he finds his brother, Bruce Pardo, lying in a pool of blood and appearing to be dead. So Brad's calling the police because that's not what you want to find on Christmas. Not at all.
Nope.
And they had determined his death was caused by one shot to the head, and a 9mm pistol was laying in his lap, but a second 9mm was also on the floor. And there was a bullet on the ceiling, so they were like, this is kind of weird. Like, was someone else in this house and shot him at close range? Because why is there a bullet in the ceiling?
Yeah.
So they're like, did someone come in, shoot him, leave the murder weapon behind? There's also 2 guns, so I think they were like, could there have been 2 people? Like, what's going on? So LAPD sat down and talked with Brad about Bruce, and Brad described him as easygoing, fun-loving, friendly, active, and Brad was convinced his brother was murdered. He was like, this is the only explanation. He had to have been murdered. And so police do start looking into Bruce's background and found he worked with computers. He had a bachelor's degree in computer science, and he worked in software with various companies, and he was even on some government contracts that required him to have like some level of clearance. And he even worked at a facility that was like associated with NASA that had like sent stuff up into space. So he does have like above level intelligence. And they also found out he'd been married to Sylvia Ortiz or Orza. I saw 2 different sources say differently, and I don't really know why. So the documentary calls her Sylvia Ortiz, and her son is on that documentary. So I would think that would be accurate, but in LA Times said Orza. I'm just putting both out there just in case.
Yeah.
So Sylvia had been married in 1988 to her first husband, but he had died in a car accident. And she did have 2 children from that marriage and another child from another man named George Orza, who she'd also been married to. They got divorced soon after their marriage, and he moved to Oklahoma. So Bruce and Sylvia had met 4 years earlier in 2004, and Sylvia had just gotten out of a marriage like right before they met, and she had just moved back to Covina. They felt an immediate connection and got married on January 29th, 2006. So Bruce, Sylvia, and Sylvia's 3 children moved into a house in Montrose, also another kind of like suburb of LA here. And soon after, things were not really going very well. Sylvia was working as an administrative assistant in 2008, and her and Bruce were having quite a few issues. Bruce had suffered a knee injury that didn't allow him to do a lot of the activities he liked to do anymore. So he couldn't be as active as he used to be, and Sylvia said he just changed, and they just didn't really get along anymore. So Sylvia decided to move out in March, and their divorce was finalized on December 18th. He had agreed to pay her $10,000. And so once the LAPD starts investigating, they discover Sylvia's last name was Ortiz, but her maiden name was Ortega. So yes, this is the same Sylvia from the house in Covina. So now they're like, okay, we have like 10 people in total dead, and there's a connection between them. So did the same shooter go after both? What's happening? So now, thankfully, the different law enforcement agencies discover the connection and start collaborating and working together. We don't see this often, so
that's amazing.
Game-changing.
Yeah.
And so there are some similarities between all 10 victims. They were all shot at close range with a 9mm handgun, and some were shot multiple times. So now they're like, okay, who was dressed as Santa? Who's this man? And they did have a neighbor who used to always play Santa, and his name was Pat, and he would come and he would take pictures, hand out presents. Like, he was just kind of a part of the whole family tradition. But he'd not done it in the past few years because he'd moved away. So they're like, okay, well, it's not him. It's not old neighbor Santa. But now police are kind of realizing, like, whoever this shooter was, like, knew the Ortega family and the tradition of Santa coming and would be expected. So you kind of know they usually have a Santa, and if I show up as Santa, they're not going to be, like, alarmed.
Yeah. Especially the kids, I mean.
Yeah. And the only Ortega sibling to survive was Leticia, who was at the hospital with her daughter. Her daughter was going to be okay. She'd been shot on the side of the mouth. So I think they'd actually said she'd actually turned her head right before the shot. So it kind of did go, like, to her cheek and the back of her jaw. So she did have some, like, cosmetic injury, but overall, like, she was okay. and like she was just gonna walk away from like a gunshot wound to the face, which I cannot even imagine being. I think she was like 8 or 9, like getting shot in the face by Santa.
And by Santa on Christmas Eve. Yeah. Like, how do you come back from that?
Yeah. So Leticia sits down with the police to tell them anything she knows. She said even though he was wearing a costume, she thinks she knows who the shooter was, and she does believe it was her sister's ex-husband, Bruce Pardo. So police want to see if they can find the blue Dodge Caliber near where they found Bruce's body, because they don't think it exactly adds up. They think there's a chance Bruce was murdered because he does have a clean record. His brother's like, no, I think he was murdered. Like, they're not sure yet. So detectives went to Bruce's house and actually found his car keys. And it did have like a little key fob on it. And they did kind of make a funny joke. They were like, we did some old-fashioned police work. We walked down the street and just kept hitting the button. Like,
yep.
Like, you know, you gotta do what you gotta do. And what do you know? The key fob eventually did unlock a blue Dodge Caliber. Inside the car, there was a Santa suit, hundreds, possibly thousands of rounds of ammunition, and a flare hanging down. So this car was actually booby-trapped. So when they pulled the Santa suit out, it was on a string attached to the flare and ignited the flare. So the car did explode and engulf in flames. Bullets were now firing off because of like the explosion. There was black powder coming out of the vehicle. Somehow, by a miracle of Christmas, I guess, nobody was hurt with all these like bullets coming out. I don't know how that's possible.
Yeah.
But the car was destroyed. So any evidence in there, gone. But now they're like, okay, I think Leticia might be 100% right about the shooter being Bruce.
Yeah, that's kind of leaning towards that. So Bruce's autopsy comes back along with a full toxicology report. So Bruce did have gunshot residue on his hands and clothing, and the physical evidence on his body and the entry and exit wounds of the bullets showed that Bruce had died by suicide. The autopsy also found evidence that tied him to the Ortega murders. He did have third-degree burns on his hands and his arms. He also had red and white material that had burned into his pants. So part of the Santa suit had actually like melted into his body. So things are looking more and more likely that this is the guy. So with the evidence and Letitia's statement, they're pretty sure at this point that Bruce is the murderer. However, investigators still don't fully understand his motive to kill the Ortegas, start this fire, and then drive 40 miles to his house to take his own life. So they're like, things are just, I don't know. But then they get another disturbing call. So a man in Pasadena calls reporting that a RAV4 had been parked in front of his house. So he'd never seen it before. He thought it just kind of looked off. So police run the plate and discover that it's a rental car under contract to, you're never going to guess, Bruce Pardo.
What?
So, I know. Didn't see that one coming. So Bruce had doctored the registration on the car to make it look like he owned it. And the RAV4 didn't seem to be booby-trapped, but it was stocked with supplies. So he had his computer tower, computer, stuff for a road trip like water, clothing, food. He also had maps of the Southwest United States and Mexico. So it did look like his original plan was to flee from the house, switch cars, and then likely head to Mexico. So apparently Bruce put detail into why he parked the car like he did in Pasadena, because where he parked the car was 500 feet from Scott Nord's house. So who was Scott Nord? Well, Scott Nord was Sylvia's divorce attorney, so it seems he likely meant to leave the booby-trapped car for the attorney. So not really sure what his exact plan was, but obviously it wasn't anything good. Clearly there's a reason it's near this guy's house, but they don't really know exactly what the plan was. So investigators interviewed Scott to get more insight into what ended Bruce and Sylvia's marriage and what might have provoked Bruce's attack. So apparently Bruce's tax return was one of the final straws in their marriage, because there was a paper about a tax write-off for his child, and Sylvia did not know that he had a child. So
it's kind of something you want to know when you marry someone. You're like, I told you, I brought my 3 kids with me. You had one somewhere? But
yeah, maybe tell me about that. I don't know. So obviously she was very upset and frustrated that he has this child as a dependent that she knew nothing about. And apparently it was a girlfriend's child. So we do want to give a trigger warning for child neglect, just child stuff coming up here. So 3 years before Bruce and Sylvia met, Bruce was living with his girlfriend Elena and their son Matthew. So in January of 2001, Matthew was about 13 months old and Bruce was the only one home with him, and Elena had gone to get groceries. And when she came home, she saw Bruce sitting in front of the TV and no sign of their son. So they start looking around for him, and then they did find him outside in the pool. He did survive, but he was in a vegetative state. Bruce was obviously very upset and bothered. He sat by his son's hospital bed for a week, but unfortunately it was a lifelong brain injury because his brain was without oxygen for so long. So he was in a wheelchair for the rest of his life. And when Matthew didn't get better, Bruce just had a really hard time with this, and he didn't handle, the relationship very well and ended up leaving. So Elena never heard from Bruce again. He did end up paying child support and filing the child as a dependent, but he never told Sylvia about any of this. But also, if you're just, taken off, how are you claiming this child as a dependent on your taxes?
Yeah, because you're paying child support. Is that, a different tax form? I don't know.
Yeah, you're paying child support, but only one parent can claim the child as a dependent. Yeah. So I'm I feel like the person who's, raising the child should be the one claiming the child as a dependent.
Especially when they have a lifelong injury because if you just decided to sit and watch TV instead of actually watching your child.
Yeah, exactly. So obviously at this point, Sylvia's really upset and scared because he never told her, but she also has 3 kids living in a house with him, and he's never told her that he neglected his son and let him drown. And she's probably leaving him alone with her 3 children because he's their stepdad. She knows nothing about this.
And he barely took any responsibility for I fucked up.
Yeah. He just left his son and had nothing to do with him other than paying child support. So Sylvia obviously could not live with this. He had already changed and this was the final straw. So she did take her kids to live at her sister's house. And in June, Bruce was ordered to pay $1,785 a month in spousal support. And investigators also found that Bruce had been caught in another lie this year. So back in July, his bosses at ITT Electronic Systems found out that he'd been fraudulently billing clients for hours he didn't actually work. So he was cheating them out of money and they fired him. So he is just on a real downward spiral here. Another little piece of information about Bruce is that he was with a woman before Elena. So her name was Delilah, and they had been engaged to be married, and he had asked her to pay for all of it, which, okay. But the day of the wedding, he did not show up. And so they found out a few weeks later that he had taken the last $3,000 out of Delilah's bank account and spent it on a Palm Springs vacation just for himself. So clearly, Bruce is not a great guy. He's not got a good track record here.
Yeah, he hasn't been charged with any crimes, but he's not a good person.
But, you're kind of shitty. Yeah.
So, he lost his job, and he lost his wife, and they say the divorce just broke him, and it was, all he focused on was just, this divorce and plotting ways to get back at Sylvia, and this just seems kind of what he settled on, was his ultimate act of revenge. So, detectives are kind of getting a better idea of why Bruce did this, so it wasn't just, 10 people are dead. It's this is very calculated. So they got a search warrant to search Bruce's house and found a lot of information. They found guns, ammunition, black powder, materials to make a bomb, and his computer that had his whole plan on it. So they were oh, thank you for just leaving us a cheat sheet here.
Yeah, just made this really easy. Thanks for doing our job for us.
Yeah. And there was a small building, in the backyard, that was a workshop that he'd actually been building a device that could spread flammable liquid. So now investigators feel like they have a very good idea of what Bruce's plan was for that day. So even before he went to the Ortega house, he parked that car in front of Scott's house. And they believe Scott was on the list of people he wanted to kill. So he's setting up his, killing everyone on his kill list, I guess. So then he dressed in the Santa suit and left for Covina. He had a compressor wrapped like a present and wheeled it up to the door. So Sal Castillo, who's Sylvia's son, he's the one who spoke on the Homicide for the Holidays episode, said that he noticed that Santa had shooting glasses on when he walked in. So he was that was kind of weird that you have these shooting glasses on.
Yeah.
And then he put down the presents, put both hands in his pockets and pulled out 2 handguns, and he immediately starts firing. And he did shoot Katrina in the face. Some reports say that he even picked up Katrina before shooting her, kind of like a Santa would do, like very, very fucked up. He then shot James and Charles. Charles did yell Bruce when it was happening, so it looked like Charles did see, like, I know who this is, and I'm gonna tell people. And Charles and James even tried to fight him off after they'd been shot, so he was, like, they were trying to save everyone else. Then Bruce did go after Sylvia, Papa Joe, and Alice. Leticia was able to pick up Katrina and run out the door, and then Bruce killed Alicia, Sherry, and Teresa. And Sal said at this point, like, he was very scared and ran outside because he was like, didn't know what was going on. And it's very heartbreaking because in the episode, he's like, I regret this decision. Like, what if I just turned around and, like, tried to ambush him? And it's like, it's not anything he could have done, but, like, having to live with that, like, after losing your mom, like, that's hard.
Yeah, that's so sad.
He broke my heart, like, during the whole episode. I was like, I just want to hug you. I'm so sorry. So once Bruce ran out of ammo, he went back to the compressor and brought it to the front door. So he had, like, connected a spray nozzle and a hose to 2 canisters. So one was filled with pressurized oxygen and one with high octane fuel. And he had about 18 gallons of gasoline into the house in, like, a mist-like form. So it was basically like a homemade flamethrower. He basically made one. Yeah. So in his Santa suit, Bruce had brought road flares, so they believe his plan was to spread the accelerant and then toss a flare, light the house on fire and leave. But what he was very smart, he thought it through, but he did not account that there would be an open flame in the house. So there actually was a lit candle in the house. So the mist accelerant probably hit this flame, and then there was a flash fire, which is very similar to an explosion. Michael, who was a grandson, had been in an upstairs bedroom playing video games and was believed to be killed in this explosion. There was a 16-year-old who was shot in the back, but she survived. And there was a 20-year-old who jumped from a second-story window and survived with a broken ankle. So at this point, Bruce was badly burned and fled. So this is when he goes to his brother's house, and his arm is about 40% burned with, like, 3rd-degree burns, so quite a bit. And they think the pain was likely unbearable, and that's when he decided to die by suicide, because he's probably like, I mean, I'm in a lot of pain. I'm going to have to get medical attention for this, and then they're going to find out why I need medical attention. Like, his plan completely fell apart. Because investigators, they don't believe it was ever his plan to end his life after murdering Sylvia and her family.
But yeah, at that point, like you said, like, you can't seek medical attention without turning yourself in. So it's like, well, that's it for me, I guess.
It's like, oh, it looks like you have a Santa suit burned into you, and a Santa just, like, it, yeah.
Yeah.
So the documentary did state that a new house was under construction at the end of the cul-de-sac on East Knollcrest Drive, which is where the Ortega house was. But the documentary was made in 2016, so naturally I had to search on Google Maps, and there is now a house at the address where it occurred. So someone did build a house on top, and somebody lives there, which, I mean, I get, but bad juju.
No, I would not.
So I don't know how to pronounce this name. Leticia Yuzopolowski. I'm so sorry. I didn't see it pronounced anywhere. Oh, that was rough. Sorry, Leticia.
I don't think that's right, but I also couldn't pronounce it any better.
I'll spell it. It is Yuzefpolsky. So, yeah. She does try to maintain the family traditions today. As we said, she was actually the youngest Ortega child, but now she's kind of the matriarch of the family. And in total, 13 children lost at least one parent that day. And one of the grandchildren actually became the legal guardian for 3 of his younger siblings when both their parents were killed. And Leticia did take custody of one of her sister's youngest daughters. It's hard to find a lot of names for these children. I think they were minors. They probably want to not have their names out there. I didn't go digging too hard because, I don't want to refer to someone by their name and then be like, how, why'd you do that to me? So.
Yeah. Like, clearly, if it's not readily out there, they don't want it to be.
So it's not that we don't care. We're just trying to respect privacy, and I'm not going to be a dick and try to find it.
Yeah.
So Leticia does try to get the remaining family together each year and continue the traditions. She's trying really hard after the accident to just assure the children, like, this is not the real Santa. This isn't, and get them gifts. And the children did eventually go to a camp that helps with grief. And now every year they visit the cemetery on Christmas Day now too. So that is the devastating Covina Christmas Eve massacre.
Yeah, like, how do you teach these children, like, how do you still believe in Santa or, like, the magic of Christmas in general after something like that? Like,
yeah.
Like, the worst day of your life that now every year is, like, the happiest day for so many people, and you have to, like,
Yeah, and, like, you're trying, like, especially Leticia, because she even said in an article, like, it was like I had 6 parents, because I had 4 older siblings, and now, I used to always be like, I'm an adult, just leave me alone. She's like, and now I miss it so much, and, like, I'm trying to, trying to deal with my own grief and also help everyone else. Like, that's hard.
Yeah, and, like, such a, like, big happy family that, like, had this celebration every year, and, like, everyone's having such a good time, and it's like you can never look back on those memories fondly because of what happened in 2008,
Yeah.
Like, it just, like, wiped that entire, like memory from your existence.
And like, we'll post it, but, like, the pictures of, like, Papa Joe and Alice and just, like, enjoying their retirement and, like, being with their kids and grandkids, and this happens, and it's just like, ugh, man. Like, Bruce Pardo, I'm sure you are rotting in the deepest levels of hell.
I sure hope so. So, Courtney, what is your perk of the week now that we are super sad and in the depressing holiday spirit?
Yeah, so my perk of the week is I got my COVID booster. So I got it yesterday. Kevin and I had a really nice day because Kevin likes to wait until Christmas Eve to do his Christmas shopping, and it drives me mad because we're very different people. I guess, like, gifts is one of my love languages. Like, I always, like, want whoever I'm getting a gift for, I'm like, I have to find, like, the perfect gift, and I'm all year planning and scheming gifts. I don't always succeed. I fail a lot of the time, but I always want to. I always have best intentions.
I don't know. I think Courtney is a fantastic gift giver. I've always gotten the best gifts from Courtney. Like, they're always, like, so, like, personalized, and it's like, oh, this thing that I mentioned, like, 8 months ago in a passing conversation that I thought would be cool to have, and, like, Courtney's, like, writing it down.
I do.
Like,
I have, like, a note.
Like, Courtney,
like,
yeah.
I don't know, note? I don't know. What are they called? Like, it's not a tab, but anyway. Of just, like, if people say something, I, like, write it down. I'm like, write it down. And Kevin's just kind of like, let's just go to the store and see what we can find. Or he'll wait until we leave in a week, and he's like, I can order this off Etsy. And I'm like, no, you can't. It will not be here until February.
No, no, Kevin. It doesn't work that way.
So I was like, okay, well, let's just go to the store and look around, see what we can find. So yeah, we had a really nice day. Like, we don't really go shopping together. Kevin's not, like, a shopper. So it was a nice day, just the two of us. And then we got our boosters and watched some movies. So excited, because studies are showing that the booster helps with the new variant. And I got a wedding in 3 months. We gotta make sure it happens. So
yeah, for sure.
But that is my perk of the week. Jacqueline, what is your perk of the week?
So my perk of the week is this week we bought our baby a new giant playpen. So it's like 6 foot by 6 foot. It's like pretty much my entire living room. So it's kind of like annoying that it's in the way, but it's also nice that she has somewhere that she can like play without her trying to pull down the Christmas tree or climb a bookshelf or, do all those fun things. So when I'm trying to work from home full time with a mobile infant, I have a little bit more sanity because I'm not having to step away every 3 seconds to pull her off of something that she's trying to hurt herself with. And it also keeps the dogs out of her face and all that stuff. So she's just got a little
area
space
that she can go wild in.
Yeah, so at first she did not like it, but now that we like play with her in it, and now she's like, oh, okay, like this is a fun spot, and now she can be in there alone for a little bit. Yeah, I mean, like we're watching her, she's not alone, but like we're not sitting next to her, but she can kind of play independently while I can get some work done, and it's helped a lot with relaxing and not being so stressed out all the time. I mean, still just a little bit, but you know.
Yeah, my parents did that for my niece and nephew because my dad owns his own business, and it's like kind of like in the basement of their house. I know it always sounds sketch. It's not sketch. I think we've talked about this, but it's a legitimate business, okay? But my sister works for him, and
that's what they all say.
My sister works for him and like brings the kids over, so they did that where they kind of built like a playpen because they were like, you can play in here and you're not gonna get into the propane tank over here. So
exactly. Yeah, so if you guys want to tell us about how you corral your children, or you know, your Christmas traditions, which hopefully are not like this episode, you know, anyway, you guys know the drill. You can find us on Instagram at Caffeinated Crimes Pod, on Twitter at Caff Crimes Pod, that's CAFF Crimes Pod. We are on Facebook at Caffeinated Crimes Podcast. You can email us at caffeinatedcrimespod@gmail.com. We are on YouTube and TikTok. If you feel so inclined, we are on patreon.com/caffeinatedcrimes, where you can donate to us monthly, and we have different levels with different perks and benefits and bonus episodes. You do get a new bonus episode this week, so if you guys are looking for some extra Caffeinated Crimes content to get through your holiday season, you can join today and get the full backlog, which is like 16, 17 episodes at this point, something like that. Somewhere around there. And you do get a new bonus episode every single month as well. So yeah, if you are able and willing and, you know, just want to throw a little Christmas present our way, that would be wonderful.
Speaking of Christmas presents, I said before, and I'll say it again, all I want for Christmas is to reach 50 reviews on Apple Podcasts. You're going to be with your family. I can guarantee a few of them are going to have iPhones. Sneak that phone away, hit that little purple app, leave us a review, put your own name if you want. As we said, we will put your names in multiple times if like you're responsible for multiple people. You just have to tell us. Just give us your name or something. It's kind of hard to decipher sometimes. So once we get to 50, we will pick one person who will get a pin, a sticker, and a $10 gift card to the coffee shop of their choice, so you can have a little extra Christmas gift if we get there in time. But yeah, just please go do that. Please leave 5 stars. Please don't leave like less, because that makes me sad. And you don't have to put anything like super prolific in the review comment. You can just be like, thumbs up.
Great.
Thumbs up. If you put something prolific, also, we'll love it. But
yes, and also I don't know if it needs to be said, but if you leave 2 stars, you're not going in the drawing. So just
if you say I hate you guys, you're the worst. Your name might collectively be left off somehow. You know, like it may happen. But yeah, if you could do that, everyone please have a happy holidays and go have a cup of coffee.
And don't commit a crime.